I'm Marin, and this is Post-its and Pens. Hello and welcome to or welcome back to my channel. My name is Marin, and here you will find a little beauty, a little books, and a little teaching content. So if that sounds like something you might enjoy, I would love for you to subscribe and stick around and join me in my little corner of YouTube. Today's video is going to be my June reading recap, where I will take you through the books that I read during the month of June. I also will be doing my WhateverAthon Wrap Up at the end of this, so check timestamps down below in case you are curious, but let's go ahead and get into the video. So to start off, I'm just going to state up front, I did not do as much reading in the month of June as I was planning on doing. So I only read 7 books this month. I say only, like I was planning on reading at least 8 because that was my WhateverAthon goal. Didn't reach it, but it is what it is. The reason for that is I took a 2-week course to get my STEM certificate. I vlogged it. I'll link it up above in case you would like to check that out. I took you through the 2 weeks and kind of talked about what we were learning, and that obviously ate up quite a lot of time because we had assignments, blog posts, readings, projects, things like that to work on. So I didn't do as much reading for the first 2 weeks of June rather. And then I took a week vacation down to Mexico to visit my stepmom. I vlogged that as well. I'll link it if you would like to check it out. But because of that, I didn't do as much reading as I'd planned on doing, but I'm still really happy with what I did get read. So per the usual, I am gonna run through the books that I read, starting from my least favorite to my most favorite. That being said, I didn't have anything below 3 stars this month, so it was a pretty good reading month. I can't complain too much. But we're gonna just go ahead and roll on in. I'm gonna try to do this kind of as quickly as possible so this video does not get ridiculously long. So let's go ahead and start with book number 7. So coming in at number 7 is Paranormalcy by Kiersten White. This was for one of the prompts for WhateverAthon. Again, I will recap all of that later in this video. I will put a timestamp so you can jump right to that if you're curious. But I'm giving this one 3 stars. I felt like if I had read this when it was released, which I believe was 2010, I think I would have liked this a lot more. It is 2010. Because this is quite a bit different than your typical paranormal romance books that were coming out at the same time as this. This really focuses on Evie and like her personal journey, not so much the romance, although there is romance. So I found that quite refreshing. That being said, I don't feel like this was anything special, and I will not be continuing on with the series. So this is a trilogy. This was the first book in the trilogy. This is the only one that I own. So I'm glad to know that I do not need to continue with another series. But yeah, this was just an okay read. It read decently quickly and it was entertaining, but like nothing more than that. It was kind of a surface level entertainment. I didn't really feel a particular connection to Evie, didn't really feel a connection to the story itself, and because of that, I will not be continuing the series. But it was fun. I liked it. 3 stars. Okay, coming in at number 6 is Easy by Tammara Weber. This book had been on my Kindle probably for at least a decade. It again served a prompt for WhateverAthon, but it also served a prompt for my June Wheel of TBR, and that prompt was on my Kindle. Yeah, see what I did there? Now, this is a new adult book. This is probably one of the most famous ones. I feel like this was one of the first ones that was released around the time when like new adult was becoming a thing. This follows our main character who follows her boyfriend to college, and her boyfriend breaks up with her. And then, so she's kind of like spinning her wheels trying to figure out what to do with herself. However, I want to give a warning because this book opens up like straight out the gates with a sexual assault scene. Like wham, bam, thank you, like in your face. So she is rescued by a guy named Lucas who stops the assault, takes her home, and then as the book goes on, Lucas and her like become a thing. And it kind of is just, it's kind of like coming of age, kind of her figuring out what she wants. You notice I'm blanking on her name. I literally can't remember what her name is. I'll put it right here on the screen. I don't know why I can't think of it. Anyway, yeah, so it's like their relationship after this happens. However, there were aspects of it that weren't handled particularly well. I will say her roommate is like a fabulous character, like stands by her side even after she tells what happened, because the guy who assaulted her is a fraternity member of her ex-boyfriend, and there's like just some drama right there. So I did like this book. However, there were some issues, as there usually is with new adult books, and like I don't want to like gloss over those. There's some issues. However, I personally found this quite enjoyable. Am I going to still be thinking about it like next month? No, probably not, which is why it's coming in at number 6 ahead of like some of these other ones. I gave it 4 stars. I did like it. I felt like it read pretty quickly. I enjoyed the story, enjoyed like the character growth, the character development. But again, it's not anything special. So, you know, there you go. All right, coming in at number 5 is Verity by Colleen Hoover. So this was the very first Colleen Hoover book that I have ever read. She writes some romance that just does not sound up my alley at all. Like, just doesn't sound like something I would really go for, particularly her like old stuff, the stuff that she wrote at first, because I remember when she came onto the scene and her books just never really sounded like something I was interested in reading. However, Verity is a thriller, and I do love a good thriller. This was a WhateverAthon pick. Again, it was also a pick for my Wheel of TBR, but I did not really know what to expect going into this. So this book follows Lowen. She is a writer. She is hired to finish writing a book series written by Verity, who was in a car accident and is unable to finish the series. So Lowen moves into the home with Verity, her husband, and her child, and this kind of details what happens. While she's at the house, she discovers this like autobiography that Verity had written, and it details a lot of like secrets and like really crazy stuff that went down. And she's like reading this manuscript. She's trying to decide if she should tell Verity's husband about it, all while she's falling in love with said husband. So this book was wild, like wild. There were parts of this where like my mouth was falling open while I was reading. It has a twist at the end. I know which way I lean. I know there were some that didn't like the ending. I felt like this was a perfect thriller. It like gripped me. It like made me keep turning the pages. Like I did not want to put this book down once I started it. I really liked this. I'm giving it 4 stars. Unlike Easy, I know I'm still going to be thinking about this one because it was crazy. It was crazy. So brace yourself if you're going to read it. I really enjoyed it. 4 stars. Not sure I'll read any of her romance, but if she writes another thriller, sign me up. Okay, coming in at number 4, I had to check my list. Number 4 is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. This is a book from my 22 books to read in 2022 list. I'll link it up above in case you're curious what other books are on there. I have literally had this on my shelf since it was released back in, let's see, 2014. So it's been sitting on my shelf since 2014, and I just finally got around to reading it. I enjoyed this one quite a lot. This is another like coming of age story. We're following our main character, Laura Jean, as she kind of is trying to figure out what she wants from her life after her sister goes to college in Scotland and kind of leaves her as the oldest song sister. She has a habit of writing love letters to the boys that she feels she's in love with, but she kept those letters kind of hidden. It was like her way of getting closure. Well, the letters get mailed out, and this book details what happens as a result of that. There were some really enjoyable parts in this book. I like how Laura Jean kind of figured herself out. Did I like all of her choices? No, but I did like kind of her strides to becoming a bit more independent, to becoming like the big sister to Kitty while Margot is away at school. I really liked the family dynamics. I felt like that was really, really sweet and something very special that you don't usually see in YA. Like there's a lot of like dysfunctional families in YA books. This is not one of them. And I just really enjoyed this. And I'm looking forward to watching the Netflix adaptation just to see how it compares. So really liked this, giving it 4 stars, and it is number 4 on this month's list. Okay, coming in at number 3 is Smoke and Iron by Rachel Caine. This is the 4th book in her The Great Library series. This is like a dystopian type situation, fantasy dystopian, where the Library of Alexandria was never destroyed. Instead, it was kind of kept under lock and key, and the library, like the people in charge of the library, are determining what information gets dispersed out into the public and what does not. There are no physical books in this world, or at least there's not very many. They are like very rare. You are given like a blank. You can like request books. You can read them that way. And this book follows some like library initiates who are studying to become librarians in book 1, and kind of what happens once they realize that like the library is not as great as they thought it was. So because this is the 4th book, I'm not going to talk much about it, but this one was like bam, 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 like just from the get-go, like all of this stuff kept happening. The one thing that I didn't love, but I understand why they did it, is that the characters were kept separate. Like before, they were like this cohesive group that was together, like moving through their troubles. In this book, they were separated for parts of it. We also had multiple POVs in this book, which you did not have in the previous books. You followed like from Jess's point of view only. So it was interesting to read from the other characters' points of view. And you kind of had to do that because they were separated. So you needed to be able to like follow what was happening on like each of the parts. So really, really enjoyed this. Looking forward to finishing this series off. If I can squeeze the 5th book into my July, which is packed with books, I'm going to, because I really want to know how this series ends. I would highly recommend this series. It is like one of my favorites of all time. And I gave Smoke and Iron 4 stars. Okay, we're at our top 2, y'all. Top 2. So coming in at number 2 is The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. This is the 2nd Beth O'Leary book that I have read. I read The Road Trip earlier in the year. Really, really liked that one. This one, like, it's touted as a romance, but that's not really what this is. And that's not really what The Road Trip was either. This book is all about grief, like dealing with grief. And the way you deal with it is like different. So we have these 3 female characters. We have Siobhan, Miranda, and Jane. And we have our main man. The one guy who is like in a relationship with all 3 of them. But there were some twists that I didn't see coming. Like I wasn't quite sure how this book was going to play out. It was not what I was expecting at all, in a very good way. Again, keep in mind, this deals with grief. And I really, really enjoyed this book. I gave this 5 stars. Like, I think that this book was quite spectacular, to be honest. There were parts that made me tear up, parts that made me laugh, parts that made me feel all kinds of emotion. And I would really recommend this one. I know that people did not like The Road Trip because they said it's not a romance. It's not. This is not either. So it's kind of interesting how she's like branching out and writing different things, but I loved this. I could see this potentially being one of my best books of the year. I really, really enjoyed it. So we'll see how that plays out, but I'm giving this one 5 stars. Yeah, this one was good, y'all. And then we have number 1, my top book for June, which is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This kind of came out of nowhere. The only reason I read this was because it was a host fave for WhateverAthon, and it is short. That's literally the only reason I picked this up. This is not my typical genre. This is sci-fi. And nothing about this, like, called to me. So it says, it's been centuries since the robots of Panga gained self-awareness and laid down their tools. Centuries since they wandered en masse, however you pronounce that, you know what I mean, right here, into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Centuries since they faded into myth and urban legend. One day the life of a tea monk is upended by the arrival of a robot there to honor the old promise of checking in. The robot has one question. What do people need? But the answer to that question depends on who you ask and how. They're going to need to ask it a lot. No, like this, no, that doesn't sound at all like something I would be interested in. But I started reading it. I listened to this on audio for the most part. I think I finished reading the last little bit of it. And I was immediately intrigued. So we're following Dex. Dex is a tea monk who like travels around to towns and serves tea to the people and like listens to their problems. Dex is non-binary, and so, you know, representation, big deal in this book. Also, this is the first Becky Chambers book I've ever read. I should probably mention that. Dex decides that they are just getting bored with like the monotony of it. And they decide to set out to find this like temple up in the mountain that had been abandoned. And while Dex has set out to do that, they run into a robot, Mosscap. Splendid Speckled Mosscap is the full name. And Mosscap kind of joins them on this journey. And this book just made me feel happy. It is very rare that a book just puts a smile on my face through like the whole book. This one did that. It had this very calm feeling to it, and I just loved every second of it. I'm going to read the second book in this series, and I think I might actually check out more of Becky Chambers' writing. Color me surprised, because sci-fi is not a genre that I typically gravitate towards, but this was something special. I'm so glad it was one of Maddie's faves for WhateverAthon, because I never would have read it otherwise, and I really would have been missing out. So I highly recommend this one. 5 stars, possibly my favorite book that I've read all year, which is saying a lot. So those were the 7 books that I read in June, my thoughts and ratings on them. Now we're going to get into my wrap up for WhateverAthon, just so I can kind of close that out. I did do one vlog during WhateverAthon, and it was during the 48-hour readathon. I'll link it up above. I didn't get very much reading done on that. I mean, story of my month. But I really had fun kind of tuning in for the sprints and things like that. But let's chat about WhateverAthon. So I'm going to scoot over. Here was my bingo board. This is my completed bingo board. So as you can see, I managed to complete 21 prompts, not counting the free space, 22 with the free space. And I earned 7 bingos for my team, which was Team Beach Readers. I had set my goal at 8 books for the month. I didn't reach it. I probably could have like stretched myself and done it, but I just wanted to like take it easy, so I didn't do that. So the 3 things that I did not complete were color on the cover, and for that I was supposed to read Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour. I am currently reading this and I am almost finished with it. I just didn't finish it in time for the month. I also had my poll pick, which I did not complete, and less read genre, which I did not complete. Both of those were going to be completed by Dragon Ball Volume 1. That was my poll pick. Dragon was the winning emoji, if you will. However, that book never came in for me at my library. And while I did finally go ahead and purchase it, I just did not have time to read it. So I'm hoping to read it at some point because I'm like a big fan of the Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z like cartoon. So I do want to read the book, but it didn't happen in June. It is what it is. I'm not too upset about it. But those were the 3 prompts that I did not complete. All in all, I consider that pretty decent, not gonna lie, especially with my 2-week class and my trip. So what that means is that I did not meet my WhateverAthon goal. I just didn't meet it. And I did not manage to fill my bingo board up. But that's okay. Not gonna stress about it. We are low stress this summer, y'all. So there you go. That is my June reading recap and my WhateverAthon wrap up. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel if you would like to see more from me, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.